Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here in today's live stream event. I know a lot of you are joining us today because we have a great program called Reminiscence Gardening Tips for Caregivers. And I am Marta Rañón, the Executive Vice President here at Southern Caregiver Resource Center. And we are a nonprofit organization that is focusing on helping those who care for others. So if you haven't connected with us and you are a family caregiver, please let us know how we can support you. Our website is www.caregivercenter.org, or you can give us a call at 858-268-4432. There it is on our on our screen, because we want to make sure that you don't do caregiving alone. And today's topic really is going to help family caregivers incorporate these activities that they can do with their loved ones, especially if the people that they are caring for are individuals that have some sort of cognitive decline, like memory loss or dementia, or maybe they are frail and elderly and therefore need assistance with activities of daily living. So I am so excited that we have this great program and some great master gardeners who are going to be talking with us today. So I encourage you to bring your pen, something to write with, and take notes. We also will have an opportunity to ask questions of our master gardeners at the end. And if you have a family member that's there with you or a friend who might also be a caregiver, bring them along and have them join you in this presentation. We welcome everyone, especially those who are family caregivers. So I want to say again, thank you so much to everyone who's here, who is attending, our presenters that you're going to hear from in a little bit, but also to San Diego City Farmers Nursery. They donated the seeds that some of you received and can put to use as our program goes along. And so you can get started with some of the planting activities that we've been talking about. And also, I want to say thank you to all of you supporters of SCRC. We couldn't do this without you. So if you want to donate so that we can continue having these types of programs, we encourage you to go to our website, caregivercenter.org or scrc.care, and you can click on the donate button and you can help support programs such as these. All right, so I want to now introduce our master gardeners, and we have several of them today. So I am going to start introducing all of them to you, and then they will give us their great program. So what is reminiscence gardening? Well, it kind of sounds like something that you want to remember, but it really is this outreach program that the UCCE Master Gardener Association of San Diego County is leading, and it engages participants in tabletop gardening and sensory experiences. So again, these are great activities for those who are caring for someone with who are frail or have some sort of cognitive impairment. So joining us today is Leah Taylor. She is the program coordinator for the Master Gardener Association of San Diego County. And there she is on the screen. She primarily does research on pollinators and honeybees and teaches the community how to use gardening for health and wellness. She is a passionate gardener, and I've been talking to her recently, and I know how passionate she is about gardening. She's also a mother and enjoys spending as much time as possible talking about insects. So thank you, Leah, for being here. We also have Debbie and Diane. So Debbie and Diane are trained and certified master gardeners through the University of California Cooperative Extension San Diego County Master Gardener Program. This is Debbie right here. And they have hands-on experience working with caregivers, staff members, and residents at memory care communities throughout San Diego County. So Debbie and Diane, thank you so much for being here as well. So I just want to say I'm so excited. I can't wait. There is Diane. I can't wait to hear all that you have to say today. And we're going to start off with Leah Taylor. Take it away, Leah.
Thank you so much, Marta. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be with you all today. I'll give you just a tiny history of the UCCE Master Gardener Association of San Diego County and some of the resources that we provide to the community. Next slide, please. We are a group of more than 300 dedicated Master Gardener volunteers. As Martha said, we are trained and certified by the University of California. We've been providing home horticultural and pest management education in California since 1980. Our own San Diego program started in 1983. So ever since then, Master Gardeners have been extending our UC research-based gardening knowledge out to you and our community and anyone who's interested in learning more about gardening. Our outreach ranges really widely in topics from backyard gardens to growing your own vegetables, patio planting, community gardens, school gardens. And for those that may not be able to get outside to your own garden, we can sometimes bring the garden straight to you. Next slide, please. During the early months of the pandemic, if you can remember back, 2 years, master gardeners, like the rest of us, didn't really know what public outreach and events would look like for our future. But one thing that didn't happen was the slowdown in enthusiasm for gardening. There are more gardeners now, I think, because of COVID than there ever have been. And you guys are all finding your own respite using gardening activities to escape your COVID bubbles and help your loved ones. So in April of 2020, our Let's Grow Together San Diego resource was created. You'll find it here as a tomato plant. This is what it looks like as a graphic on our website. And this is a highlight of our community outreach programs that we offer, including our very special Reminiscence gardening program. And each of these tomatoes gives you practical gardening activities with information, links, resources, upcoming classes, all virtually. You can use this resource safely from home, and we offer our curriculum in multiple languages. So we hope you visit us online and see and use this resource, as well as connect with Master Gardeners who are there via email or a hotline phone number to answer all of your burning gardening questions. So with that, I will turn it over next to Debbie Handel. Debbie is a master gardener and has been around for a number of years conducting outreach in our community, but Reminiscence Gardening holds a special place in her heart and my heart. So Debbie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leah. The three of us are very excited to share our Reminiscence gardening activities with you all today. Diane and I will focus on 4 that are listed on the MG website. The activities are indeed posted in English, Spanish, and Tagalog because we know there's a very large workforce of care partners who speak these languages. In these pictures you see here, these are the 4 activities that are posted on the website. The succulent dish garden in the upper left corner there, photo. You will see it contains seashells and colorful sand, and we hope it's reminiscent of a trip to the beach. And the microgreens on the right, top right there, is an activity that Diane is going to take you through step by step just a little bit later in our presentation. And coming down in the lower right, that is sensory exploration, which I will explain a little bit more about later. But it's an opportunity to engage our garden partners and tickle their memories. And finally, that happy scarecrow that you see there is the result of tabletop planting, which we like to do seasonally. It's inspiring and very satisfying. So those are the 4 activity guides that you will find on our website. Next slide, please. By definition, reminiscence gardening is a program to help individuals with dementia, or our garden partners, as we like to refer to them, recall gardening items or actions from the past by stimulating their senses. From the very beginning, reminiscence gardening has been around since late 2017, early 2018. And our 4 main goals were to encourage physical activity stimulate intellect or cognition, boost energy, and increase social interaction, not only for the individuals living with dementia, but for care partners, family members, staff members, and folks who work in memory care communities. So it's not just for the individuals with dementia. Over the years, we've added a few more goals, as you can see by this list, in an effort to support a healthy lifestyle, not only for our garden partners, but for anyone who doesn't think that they would be better off with a little less stress and build up some confidence. I think that's everyone. Next slide, please. One of the activities I'm going to take you through right now is the potting, tabletop potting activity. Specifically, I focused on potting herbs because of the sensory experience with that. So everything that's listed here in the supply list is also in this photo. This tidy tray, this black tray, I'm going to try to show you right here if I can. It's got a very narrow opening. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you. Nope, too small. It's short in the front, so it makes it wonderful for ideal for folks who are in wheelchairs. So they're able to come right up to the table. The tidy tray keeps all of the supplies handy, close at hand right there, and is lightweight, easy for a care partner or caregiver to move around. So with these activities, we're going to be able to pot something up. Next slide, please. Okay, potting is easy as 1, 2, 3. This first photo shows how the plastic pot has holes in the bottom. And the reason for that is because we need the water to be able to drain out. If you've ever watered a potted plant and you notice a sulfur smell, it's the plant's way of telling you, I need less water and I need more air. So a little anaerobic material going on in there. And so we want to make sure that the water can get out. But we don't want the soil to get out, so we put the coffee filter in the pot so that when the soil goes in, it stays in, but it still allows the water to drain out. And then fill it about halfway full of soil. Next slide. Okay, I add the largest plant first. In this case, it was my lavender, and that's the thriller. Take it out of its pot, stick it into my main pot there, and from there I'm going to build around it. So the lavender is a sensory experience. It smells really good. It's going to be the showpiece of the pot. And then I've added a mint plant here, which also smells good. And I'm going to start putting in my fillers. Next slide. Thank you. The next plant here is Dusty Miller. It is a great sensory plant, one I recommend that you try if you're going to do these potting activities at home. It's very soft, it's light to the touch and fuzzy, and just a little bit different than most other little bedding plants that you would put in your pot. So this becomes another one of my fillers. But I'm going to tease the soil out a little bit to expose the roots and give them a better opportunity inside the pot. So that's what we call teasing the roots. I've removed about a third of the soil at the bottom, and in the last picture there on the right, you can see that the roots are exposed and they're ready to go right into the pot. Next slide, please. So I've got my Dusty Miller, my mint, my lavenders in there. I tucked in a beautiful marigold. And the last one I added is the spiller. So I had my thriller, my fillers, and this is the spiller. It's a calibrachoa. And it's beautiful when it grows. It trails down, so it makes an excellent pot plant for a hanging pot or one to set on the edge of your counter or table. And a quick word about annuals versus perennials. I'm sure you've heard those terms. Perennial plant in this case would be the lavender, the Dusty Miller, the mint. They will rejuvenate and come back year after year. You can prune them down and they will come back. Where an annual is pretty much just like it sounds. It has a lifespan of usually a season or two. We're very fortunate here in San Diego because of our climate, and so a lot of the annuals can last a long time. But in this case, the calibrachoa and the marigold would have to be replaced if we're going to continue on with those. Next slide, please. So I've got all my plants in. I'm going to add a little soil and then gently press down around the pot to make sure that I'm pushing the soil in gently. I don't want to break any of the stems. Very careful not to break any of the lower parts of the plant. So just a gentle push down and then add a little bit of water. And a quick word about that. You don't want to have your pot dry out completely. You want to keep it moist, but you can drown plants, so you don't want to put too much water in. I would suggest that maybe you invest in a moisture meter. You can buy them at nurseries or at big box stores. They're inexpensive and a good investment to save your plants. Next slide, please. So my plants are in, I've added a little bit of water, soil's good, and now I'm going to add what we call the bling. And this is what you saw earlier, that cute little scarecrow. In this case, I was making something for the Easter season or Passover season. So I've put in these cute little eggs, and I put a little stake in there with my 93-year-old aunt's name on it. So I can assure you this makes a lovely hostess gift if you're going somewhere, and whoever you're giving it to will be knocked over when they find out that you made this yourself. If you go to a store and you try to buy a bouquet or potted plant or something, it's going to cost you a few bucks, but I can assure you this didn't cost a lot of money, but it comes with a lot of love, and folks will love it. When I give it to my aunt, she's going to make me feel like I'm 12 years old and tell me how wonderful I am and how cute it is. And, you know, doesn't that feel good? So, okay, next slide. Okay, an important step that we do, a very big part of reminiscence gardening, is an activity that we bring on because it can be done obviously with friends, family members, and clients. And it's also on our website, so you can get information about how to do it specifically. But this is how we engage the garden partners before we do the actual planting activities. We provide plant cuttings of all kinds. They're safe, they're non-toxic. It's fruits and vegetables, pine cones, pieces of bark, and definitely scented herbs. You can see this lady on the right here. She is living with dementia, but she knew she needed to take a giant whiff of this lavender, and she picked it up and put it up to her nose and took this big whiff, and eyes closed. And just looking at this picture, you can almost sense how wonderful that it was for her, right? Often the sense of smell stays strong with people who have dementia, and as they get older, that is one of the last senses that they lose. So we were really happy that she enjoyed that quite so much. We also have vintage garden tools on the table, and we have large piece puzzles that are made specifically for individuals who are memory impaired. The ones we have these beautiful photos of garden shots. They're wheelbarrows and lotus ponds and cats sitting in the field, and they're very inviting. And together we do these puzzles with our garden partners. And it's just a wonderful way to connect, to see how verbal they want to be that day, how much they want to engage that day. Perhaps they're not having a good day and they just want to sit while you do the puzzle. And if you are a care provider, you've experienced this, and this is a good way to put our toe in the water and see what we're going to get from our garden partner for the day. Okay, next slide, please. So very big goal, like I said, of reminiscence gardening is to stimulate the senses. Look at this beautiful basket here. It is full of items to explore, touch, smell, sight, and sometimes even taste. Sometimes we'll open a tangerine and everybody gets a bite. So we want everything to be very stimulating, very inviting. And this photo on the right, I included it in the PowerPoint because a quick little story. We had a garden partner who spoke very little English. She was Italian, and the master gardener was challenged by having, to figure out how to connect with this lady. But we had all the cuttings and everything laid out on the table. And suddenly the garden partner started to collect things from the table. And what she did was she took this fig leaf and she stuffed it with woolly bush, and she started to stitch it closed with dried lavender stems. And she made this sachet, and it just blew us all away. We were just flabbergasted by this wonderful thing that she had put together. And then we found out she was a prankster because she really could speak English, and she spoke English pretty well. So she tricked us. Okay, thank you so much for letting me share that with you today. Reminiscence Gardening, as Leah said, is just very special to us, and a wonderful program. But we have more for you. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Diane, who's going to share another very fun and interesting tabletop planting activity with you. So you're in for a treat. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. That's awesome. I think that now's the perfect time to be talking tabletop gardening because the garden centers are so full of beautiful, luscious plants. It's hard to decide which ones to pick. So let's talk seeds. Seeds are these amazing little bundles of energy that are just waiting for those right conditions to bust out of that shell. And growing microgreens from seed is fast and it's easy, it's inexpensive, they're nutritious, and it's just a fun activity that anybody in your family will enjoy. As a caregiver, I'm sure you're probably looking around constantly for things that you might be able to do with your care partner. And this is one that's a pretty easy activity to pull off. You don't need any expensive tools either. Like you can see in the photo here, all you need is a clean container. This is a plastic takeout container from my favorite takeout place, and the lid. You need some potting soil and some microgreen seeds, of course. And I have a packet here. These are, I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe not. No. Oh, there you go. Jazzy Mix. And that's a mix of lettuce and mustard and radish and all kinds of seeds. It makes a real spicy mix. And then you need a jar. You can use an old spice container that you've emptied out the seasonings. You can see the holes there. I'm using a Parmesan cheese shaker. This is like you'd get in your Italian restaurant where you get the crushed pepper flakes or the Parmesan cheese. It's got a bunch of little holes in the lid, and I got this for $1 at a discount store. And then something to water with, so you can use your faucet, or you can use a condiment container like this to put some water in, or a spray bottle, and some paper towels. So just let's get started with this. There's no need for the container to have any holes in it. You're just going to use this to create like a little mini greenhouse. So you fill the container about 3/4 full with soil. And that's one of the reasons that I like these plastic containers, because you can kind of see the soil in there. And you can also see it that you've got it level. So once you put your soil in there, you want to just take your hand and kind of pat it down so it's nice and even. And then you take your condiment container or your faucet spray nozzle, whatever you want to use, and you really moisten the soil. And don't worry, if you get the soil too wet, one time I did, I ended up with a little too much water. So I just inverted the lid, and you could just pour it out, and the lid will hold the soil in place, and you can just pour off the extra water. So you've already filled your jar with your seeds, hopefully, and just take that and shake it over the top of the soil. And you want to do this fairly densely. You want to be sure that you've got really good coverage on the soil there for the seeds. Then you're going to take your paper towel and just fold it so it fits right onto the top of that container. Just like this. So it looks like that. Once you've got your paper towel in place, just take your condiment bottle or your water source again and really dampen that paper towel. Really get it nice and soaking wet. And then just take your lid and put that on top and put the whole thing in a nice warm place. You don't want to put it in direct sun. You want to just put it in a warm spot. I just put mine on my kitchen counter. It's there handy so I can keep an eye on it and I know what's going on with the seeds. So after about 4 or 5 days, I like to take a little peek and see what's going on with the seeds. And in this slide on the left, or the photo on the left, you can see where I peeled back the paper towel, and you can see that the seeds are already starting to sprout. They will use the light once we take the paper towel off to really supercharge that growth. The seeds in that particular container are basil seeds. That's why they look a little purple, because they do tend to be a purpley looking sprout when they come up. And you may notice on these photos that there are some white kind of fuzzy areas near the seeds and on the seeds. And those are okay. Don't think that's mold or something that's gone wrong. That's really fine. Those are the really tiny, tiny, tiny root hairs from the seeds that are just starting to germinate there. So the photo on the right really shows the seeds after about 8 hours. I mean, these guys just take off. Once you remove that paper towel, they are ready to get growing, and they do. They really do just take off pretty quickly. Next slide, please. So during this whole process, you want to be sure that you keep the soil wet with a light spray of water or a little bit of a drizzle from the other container that I was showing you, or a spray bottle. And I think the other cool thing about this is that you can watch these seeds literally grow from the top and from the bottom. So if you're using a clear container, like you can see in this photo on the left, you can see the roots. And at this point, they're longer, the roots are longer than the sprouts are taller. So those guys are just really getting going there as far as their growth is concerned. And the photo on the right is the seeds. They're about 5 days old at this point from the time I removed from the paper towel. So they're just really starting to take off. Next slide, please. So when the sprouts are about 3 inches tall or so, give or take, they're ready for harvest. And I just take a pair of clean scissors and I just kind of hold it up like you're doing a little haircut. You don't want to pull them out of the soil. You just want to gently pull them up and take your scissors and cut right across. There's no need to pull them out of the soil because you don't want to get the soil mixed in with the sprouts. They're too tiny and it's too hard to get the soil off. So then you can just put the sprouts in your hand that you've trimmed off and run them under some cool water in the sink, or use a fine sieve, and then put them on a clean towel and just pat them to dry. The sprouts that you cut, the ones that have been cut off, what's remaining in the soil there will not regrow. But what's left, the other sprouts, will last for a good week or so. So you can have sprouts continuously over a few days' time. Next slide, please. So here's a couple of great ways to enjoy the fruits of your labor. You can add the microgreens to a tossed salad, of course, but you can also sprinkle them over some other salad things. Like here I have tomatoes and cheese in a caprese salad, and I've taken my basil seeds, sprouts, and sprinkled them on top there. Or on my sandwich. So I use my regular lettuce mix seeds to liven up my sandwich, to take a place of lettuce because I didn't have any that day. So the sprouts fill in a really nice little nutritious boost there to the sandwiches. Once you're finished with the microgreens, you've trimmed all, you can recycle the plant material that's left, a little bit of the sprouts that are left, and the soil into a compost bin, or you can put it in your green waste bin. So there's no need to waste that potting soil. It's not good enough. You won't want to use it again in another pot to plant other plants in it, but you could scatter it out in your yard. It would be fine to do that too. The seeds likely won't germinate because they're so small. Next slide, please. So now that you've had some success with growing your microgreens, you can easily move on to starting lots of other types of seeds. Again, there's ways to do this at no cost or low cost, ways to start your seeds. And I understand from Marta that you had received some many of you had received packets of seeds in the mail. So this will maybe get you started on how to get those started. But just quick review, unlike the tabletop potting activity that Debbie was showing you, these containers for growing microgreens don't need to have drain holes in them. In fact, you don't want drain holes in them. But when you're doing something like seed starting, you want something that's porous. It doesn't necessarily have to have drain holes in it, but something that's porous works really well. So you can see here in the photo on the right, I've got an egg carton, just a fiberboard egg carton. And my other favorite item for starting seeds is a toilet paper roll. So you can take a toilet paper roll and use that the same way. So what you do then is you take your potting soil or your seed starting mix, if you have that, and layer it into your egg carton or fill your toilet paper roll. You don't want to pack it down. You want to keep it nice and light and fluffy so that the seeds can easily push through their cell and into the soil. So lightly moisten the soil just like you would when you were starting your microgreens. Then you take your seeds and you press them into the soil. Just gently press them into the soil to the desired depth. And the depth information is on the back of the seed packet. So if you turn the seed packet over on the back side, it will tell you how deep to plant the seeds. Things like tomato seeds, you really don't even really need to do much, but just gently lay them on top of the soil. In my example you'll see in a minute, I planted pumpkin seeds, and the pumpkin seeds do need to be pushed down into the soil a little bit. So once you've got your seeds in place, you want to just place a light layer of soil over top, and again just moisten the soil. Now what I do is I use 2 or 3 seeds per cell, like in the egg carton there or in my toilet paper roll. That way one might sprout and the other may not. So that way you're sure to get enough of the seeds sprouting for your plants that you want to move out into your garden or into your larger pot. You want to be sure you keep them moist, so you sprinkle them every day, maybe once or twice a day, just to keep them moist. For the egg carton, you can see here I took an old cookie sheet and I just covered it with some aluminum foil and put the carton on top. That way that keeps the water or the mist or whatever, from getting all over the kitchen counter. And with the toilet paper rolls, I just put those in a plastic container. You don't really need to cover these, but you can. You can just layer a lid on top. They don't need any light. They don't want the direct sunlight. It's just too much for them at this point in time. Next slide, please. So ta-da! Here's the results. On the left hand, tomatoes after about 10 days. You can see I had pretty good germination success with these little guys. I've got at least 2 of them coming up in each of the cells that I planted them in. And now it's really time to select the strongest of the 2. So I go through and I take my scissors again and I just cut off the one that looks like the weakest of the 2 seeds and dispose of it. Again, you can put that in your compost pile or in your green waste bin. And the one that's left will benefit from not having to compete for the nutrients in the water in there. So it will help that get stronger faster and be ready to plant it out. And then on the right-hand side, yay, pumpkins. I love to grow pumpkins. And you can even grow some varieties of pumpkins in large pots on a patio. They do great in the ground. But again, if you've got a smaller space that you don't have room to plant them in the ground, because some of the varieties can get pretty large and pretty aggressive. They can get to be pretty big plants. And again, here you can see I planted 2 per roll. And my germination rate wasn't quite so good. I got a couple of seeds in one. I didn't get any activity in the other one, and I got 1 seed in the one. So I'm going to have to select the winner of the 2, and then I'm going to take them out and put them in the garden. So in a few weeks, just about maybe 3-4 weeks, the tomatoes and the pumpkin seeds will have their second set of leaves, and these are called true leaves. And that's when they're ready to be hardened off. So I take them out and I put them in a sunny spot on my patio for a few hours, just a few hours every day for maybe a week, 4 or 5 days, depends on how strong they are. And then they're ready to be planted. So you don't even need to take them out of the containers. In fact, you shouldn't take them out of the containers at this point. They don't have really enough root space to do that. So just take and plant the whole thing. The toilet paper roll will decompose, the cell of the egg carton will decompose, and while they're still somewhat intact, they will help hold the moisture around the roots from the new plants and help that root go down deeper into the soil, which is what you want. You want them to really develop some deep roots to go down into the soil. And of course, you want to keep them moist during the whole process because they're going to need that moisture. Unlike microgreens, these guys will need a little bit of fertilizer. So about 3 to 4 weeks in, I usually put a little light feeding of a liquid fertilizer on them. Next slide. So now that you've mastered seed starting, it's easy to get your loved ones involved in the process. And these photos are taken or were taken at one of our Reminiscence gardening activities. On the left, you can see how easy it is for our garden partner in the wheelchair to participate. She could add the soil and pat in the soil and sprinkle the seeds and squirt that spray bottle just as good as the rest of us. And she was having a great time with her garden partner there. And the gal on the right is having a wonderful time. In fact, she didn't need any coaching. She just grabbed that squirt bottle and she was spraying away to get those seeds going. I think the key to this, though, is to make sure that you've got all of the materials assembled before getting started. You want to be sure you're not running out to the garage to grab the bag of soil or heading off to the sink for some water. Spread your plastic cloth down or your newspapers or whatever you're going to do to cover the surface that you're working on. And be sure that you've got all of your materials set up before you bring your care partner to the table. Next slide, please. So this Reminiscence gardening program that Debbie and I are involved with has really had quite a good reception by the memory care communities in San Diego County. We conduct these activities, these same activities that we've shared with you today in these care communities. And the program was so well received by the statewide Master Gardener Association that in 2020 we were awarded, or the program was awarded, the coveted Search for Excellence Award. And we were really quite proud of that, very happy to get that recognition for the program. Next slide, please. So if you visit the website that Leah was telling you about earlier with the tomato plant and the little tomatoes on it, and you click on the one that says Reminiscence Gardening, as Debbie was telling you earlier, the activity guides for the 2 activities that we did today are there. Again, they're all in English, in Spanish, and Tagalog, and you can print them in any of those languages directly from the website. So we hope you'll take a minute to visit that and take a look at the other activities that are available. The guides read really just kind of like a recipe. They have the list of ingredients that you need, all of the materials, and then step-by-step instructions to guide you through the activity so that it makes it easy for you to conduct these in your home. Next slide. So we'd like to thank you very much for having us today. We hope you enjoy your time in the garden, whether it's at your kitchen table or on your patio or in your garden bed. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Diane, Debbie, Leah. I was taking notes. I was just like jotting everything down that you were saying because this is such a great activity to do with not only the people that you are caring for, especially if we said, we had some mobility issues or we're caring for someone who has some sort of memory loss, but also with children. And, one of the questions that came in as you were doing the presentation was, how do I incorporate this activity with my children and the person that I'm caring for? So I can totally see this being an activity, whether it's the seed germination or planting, the tabletop planting. But I don't know if you wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about that, Diane, about incorporating uh, just different generations, children, older adults working together to do these activities.
You know what? I'm going to let Leah answer that. And the reason is Leah has little ones. It's been a long time since my kiddos were little.
Well, thanks, Diane. Yeah, I've got a really rambunctious toddler and older parents who also really love gardening. So it is a joy to have a multi-generational gardening activity. Always make it a game for the little ones and keep it interesting for our care partners. So my parents love to compete with my son. When we start our seeds, we see, well, did you get two pumpkins in your container and grandpa only got one. So we like to make it a game and make it part of our daily routine to get our care partners involved and also the little ones involved, keep them excited.
That is so great. I know I've in speaking with some of you, I know that I've mentioned being a caregiver myself, and when I was caring for my great aunt who had dementia and had mobility issues, she loved gardening. She loved gardening, and so it was an easy activity for me to engage with her and incorporate it during the day because it's so easy. We just went to the backyard and she would start pulling the weeds or maybe looking at the plants and maybe doing some cuttings, and it was very easy for her. But what I really liked about the presentation here is that there's so many different types of gardening that you can do. You talked about tabletop gardening. I loved incorporating some of the herbs and in the, what did you call it, the thriller, filler, and spiller. Diane, you can talk about that because we kind of don't think about it that way. Why don't we just get a plant and we pot it? But I think, how can it be easy? Maybe you can talk a little bit about how caregivers can think about incorporating those different, the thriller, spiller, and what was it, the filler plants, and some examples that they can use for that.
I could speak to that. I think it's important that while you're doing the activity, you take your time and you really enjoy each one of the steps. So um, we, used the filler and the thriller and the spiller, and it's just an easy way to imagine how you want the pot to look. But while you're actually doing it, I think it's important to take the time, whether it's with children or older adults or someone with any kind of disability, to engage them in feeling the difference between the dry soil and when the soil's been watered, or what the different leaves feel like and how do they smell. Like, obviously the herbs smell wonderful, but it's not just herbs. There are some really fragrant plants as well. The marigold, for instance, that was in the photos that I used, is pungent and it's a little bit stinky, but it does have a fragrance, and you can expand on that a little bit. I think it's important to see, if you shake the pot or you shake the seeds or if you shake the plant, is there a sound? Is there a sensation to all of that? And how does it look in your pot while you're putting the flowers in? Stop and I used to do this with my mom and dad. They both had dementia, and I would ask them to look at it. Does this please you? Do you like the way this looks? And perhaps on that day they couldn't really respond, but I think it's important to stretch it out, not rush through, and really get the whole experience from it. There's so much there to explore.
And Debbie, I was listening to your presentation. You were talking about the sensory and stimulating the senses, and I think a lot of caregivers might get a little bit feel a little bit overwhelmed. I'm not a master gardener. I don't know which plants, but really, it's just literally getting your hands on the plant and smelling it and touching it and looking at it. And even what we do many times, right, who us that don't know much about the difference between certain plants or how they're going to grow, is really smelling them and touching them. I know, Leah, you talked about getting mint and smelling it and crushing it in between your fingers, and that's a sensory experience, and it could jog some memories in the people that you are working with, because maybe they used to use mint for cooking or rosemary. And so that's another way to engage that individual. Do you have any more suggestions about what kind of herbs would be easy container plantings? Maybe Debbie, you want to share some of those?
Um, sure. I think any herb is a good container plant to use, and
Okay.
if you go to a nursery, if you go to anywhere that sells plants, even some of the grocery stores, they have herbs right
Mm.
outside the stores. You start to go in, and I think exploring them, what smells good to you, take a big whiff. And if you have a successful pot, I do have a long planter in my backyard that just has herbs in it. And so if I need dill or if I need some parsley or something, I can just go in the back and take a few snips and throw it into whatever my recipe is. So I think that it's a personal choice which ones you want to grow in your garden. I will say a little bit about mint. It is a fast grower and it has a mind of its own. So if you're going
It's
to
a
put it
weed.
in your garden, be careful because it's a lovely plant. And oh my gosh, there's so many fabulous, hot mint and sweet mint and peppermint and chocolate mint. And you could really go crazy on them. They're beautiful and you could use them all. But I like to keep mine in a pot because I can manage it a little bit easier. It will find its way throughout your garden. So just
Oh
a
yeah.
little word about mint.
I
But
remember
it's so
starting off
great.
with a little container, and before you knew it, I had this whole box full of mint, and I didn't know what to do with because there was just a lot. But
Yeah.
it's great for making tea.
Sure,
It
sure.
is. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
of
Yeah.
course, besides the reminiscing aspect of it, right? We talk about jogging memories and really incorporating all of the senses. But how does gardening improve one's health? We are in year, what is this, year number 17 of the pandemic, it seems like. How can we incorporate, of course I'm joking, but it just seems like it's never ending. So how do we incorporate an activity like gardening to improve our health and our mental well-being? Maybe Leah, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I can start. Well, we're doing it just by getting a little gardening education. That's where we start, and putting our hands in the soil, touching plants. Us as a community and gardeners, we've been doing it for so long. There is finally the research and science that's coming along to back up our claims that gardening makes us feel good and connects us to the earth and connects us to the food we eat. So just get started. There's no better time than now to start on your wellness journey. And doing planting activities like seed starting uses your fine motor skills, and you may not even realize that you're practicing, your grasp and picking up small items. And for an older adult, that's a great activity to stimulate your mind and connect your body and connect you to the garden.
And it's also very much a social activity, right? That you can do with other people, that you can incorporate others to join you in. Maybe having I don't know, a gardening party, even virtually how we're doing this, right? You can incorporate that into that activity as well. So we have a question here that says, I'm caring for my father who has very little mobility. What adjustments in gardening can I make to put less strain on his body? So I know, Diane, you were talking about those pots, right? Or no, it was Debbie. You were talking about that box.
Tidy
Um,
tray. I think I can
the
maybe
tidy
show it
tray.
a little bit better
Yes,
now. Can you see how it's
yes.
low in the front right here? So if it's on the table, it's very easy for the garden partner to come up on, and it's open right here. So they don't have to go up over the top. And it makes the access very simple for them, ideal for someone with limited mobility in a wheelchair. And it's very light, it's easy to manage. It's a wonderful tool for bringing the gardening into the table. Obviously you could do it outside as well, but if you had to garden inside, if it was difficult to get your care partner out the door, then you could do it right there on the table. So there are a lot of tools available, ergonomic tools for folks who have maybe some arthritis, some
Mm.
difficulty holding tools and grasping tools. And again, if you explore the Master Gardener website, we do have something called FIG, and it's for folks friendly integrated gardening, and it will help explain ways for people who have some disabilities or some limitations. It will suggest things for safety's sake. Also, just real quick while I'm saying safety, on the Master Gardener website, we have actually it's on the University of California website, where we have a list of safe, non-toxic plants for handling.
Mm.
So that might be something that someone might want to explore before shopping. Usually at a nursery, the staff is knowledgeable and will let you know if something is not safe. But there's a lot of ways to engage everybody with all abilities.
That is a wonderful suggestion, because I think we often get guided by, especially those of us who are not master gardeners, but get guided by the colors or maybe the look of a plant, but not know that it might not be a safe plant, especially if we're crushing it and smelling it, if it's a toxic plant. So that's good that you have that on your website, and people can go there and check that list out. I have here a question that says, I don't have a backyard, so my gardening has to be indoors. What do you recommend? So I don't know who wants to take this. Maybe Diane, since you're doing little.
Sure. Well, I think, the microgreens is a perfect little activity for indoors. It doesn't have to be, in fact, you don't want to take it outside because the greens are pretty delicate and they don't need or want the direct sun. So that's one activity. The other things you could do is grow succulents, and you could create, if you
Mm.
go again to the website and download one of the activity guides for a succulent dish garden, that walks you through step by step how to create a pretty little dish garden using succulent plants. And all of those will grow just beautifully indoors. They don't need to be outdoors. But there is a whole new revolution, if you will, of houseplant gardening right now. People are really into, I guess, the whole pandemic thing, forcing everybody back into inside spaces, has blossomed with houseplants. And so that's another way that you might want to think about gardening, if you will. It is gardening, that you can bring into your home.
That is true. I hadn't even thought about that. Because I think when we think of gardening, we think of, you must have this big backyard or this big space, and not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have that. I
Mhm.
know that I used to pay attention a lot to my indoor plants, and then I had children, and the plants were the last thing on my mind. And so, as you can imagine, I went through a lot of plants until I finally gave up, and I just kind of did the succulent thing and left them outside and watered them, right? But somebody
Mhm.
says here, I feel like I have a black thumb and overwater my plants. How often should I water? And I feel like this question is directed at me, because that's what happened with my plants I used to have inside. Um, so I don't know, Leah,
Oh,
maybe you want to take this one, because I know you talked about people's expression of having a black thumb.
Sure. Debbie and Diane can jump in as master gardeners, but I think no one has a black thumb. You all have green thumbs. You just didn't put the right plant in the right place at the right time. Plants kind of have particular needs, just like people, like a certain spot. So if the plant that you liked, or you it had red flowers in the nursery and you thought that was the best plant for you, and you took it home and it didn't like your kitchen window, maybe it would prefer your back patio instead. So even though it didn't work in the spot that you got, don't give up. Try something different. Try a different type of plant, or look at that plant tag before you buy. That gives you a lot of good information on how much sun that plant would want. And maybe Debbie and Diane can address watering needs too, how to check down in the soil to make sure that your plant actually needs water before you water it. The top will look dry, and underneath is still plenty of water for the roots, and we don't even realize it.
I think
I
I
had
swear by
mentioned
my water meter.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I had mentioned that earlier, and they can be very inexpensive. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it, and they're very accurate.
I'm so
Mhm.
glad
I
you
think you could get
mentioned that
one
because I
for.
felt like for wigs. I was just gonna say that I feel like I'm cheating if I use a water meter because I'm not paying attention. But you use them too, and you're the master gardener, so I think that's okay.
If you meet a
It's
master
definitely
gardener who says
okay.
everything's growing in their garden and they haven't lost any plants and there are no issues, they're probably not telling you the truth because there's always something going on in the garden. There's a pest or maybe a
Or
fungus
something.
or something, that just you're overwatering or you're underwatering, and that's part of the fun. It's always an experiment. So for all of us,
And
everybody.
absolutely. And I also think that as caregivers, we're really trying to incorporate some activities that we can do with our loved ones and in our family members. But also I think adjusting our expectations, right? This idea that we're going to do this planting, we're going to have this pot, it's going to have these plants, and it's going to grow beautifully, and we're going to have carrots, and then that doesn't happen. Like, I'm so glad that Diane mentioned that some of her starting sprouts didn't sprout at all, and some of them only grew one. That's okay. That even
Mhm.
just the activity of being around the plants and the soil. I remember with my aunt who I used to care for, she just kind of wanted to maintain the potted plant. And there was this one in particular, it was kind of high, but it was right at her height in her wheelchair. And she loved to just make sure that she was weeding it and kind of cutting any, scrawny little growths and making sure the leaves were clean. And that was, for her, that's what she was doing. She was taking care of that pot, that plant. And so it wasn't necessarily that she was going to pot anything new and expect a growth, but it was just maintaining that. So even that, I think it's okay. It doesn't, I think we
Mhm.
have these expectations that we're going to have this garden, we're going to have all these salads. um I think we need to be careful with those high expectations as caregivers. I wanted to ask, as we are concluding, is there anything else that each of you would like to leave us with? Any thoughts, any comments, any suggestions as we're wrapping up our conversation? Because I know we can talk forever, but we're coming to the end of our program. So anything that you want to share with our audience?
I wanted to share that master gardeners are here to help you. There's always so many questions when you're getting started, and there's always something else to learn. So, we're a really excellent resource for you as caregivers and you as budding gardeners. Call us, email us. We're just here to provide any support you need in your gardening adventures, no matter how small or big your garden may be.
Great. Thank you, Leah.
And I
Well
might just
said.
add that it's tough to be a caregiver. We all know that. And so you have to take care of yourself as well. And we know that as well. It's not always easy to do, but sometimes doing some micro seeding or tabletop planting is just good for you. And a little bit rewarding and certainly satisfying. And sometimes just to take that time for yourself is really important. So we commend all of you that are caregivers, and we encourage you to take care of yourself so you can do a better job of taking care of others.
That is absolutely correct, Diana. I mean, Debbie, I'm so glad you said that because I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, I had this innate need to plant or do something with the garden. And I started with my succulents, and I would just kind of cut little clippings and make little container, centerpieces just for myself. And that just gave me the outlet, and I felt so good, and I had control over this situation versus the pandemic. And so it made me feel really good to have that me time to do that. So thank you so much for sharing. Anything else, Diane, that you want to leave us with?
I think I just thank you for having us here today. It's really been wonderful to share gardening information with you and our Reminiscence gardening program with you, and to let you know that we're here to support you in all of your gardening endeavors.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. We've learned so much. I've taken so many notes. We really appreciate you taking the time, because we know you're busy, to really guide us with activities and support our self-care needs as family caregivers. So thank you to our Master Gardeners. Again, Leah, Debbie, Diane, the Master Gardeners Association. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. San Diego City Farmers Nursery for the seeds. And of course, if any of you want to continue these type of programs by supporting SCRC, I really encourage you to go to our website, and click on the donate button, but also to see any upcoming events. That is caregivercenter.org/workshops/events or dash events. And you see it here on your screen. We have a lot of activities coming up, especially self-care activities, to help all of you. And you remember that you don't have to do caregiving alone. SCRC is here to support you. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here, and have a great day and the rest of the week. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.